When you talk about the franchise business that you had a little bit, because you had, it's called Super Weave Express.
Yeah, Super Weave.
So what was the all right, Super Weave Express. I'm assuming it was weaves.
Hair extensions, the full service salon.
Big business, man.
Yeah.
So that's $1 billion business, right? We talked about the hair business, but not really in depth. But what made you want to go into, as a man, what made you want to go into a woman's industry?
Man, it's a supply and demand thing, right? So as an entrepreneur, you got to supply a product. And if there's a demand for it and there's a spread, then you can make a profit. And that's the only reason why I looked at it. The founders of that company are actually from my hometown, Port Arthur, Texas. Okay. And they had several locations. And I sat down with them and they showed me the revenue numbers, and their store was doing like $500,000 a year. And I was like, man, I had no idea.
The Weaves store?
Yeah.
It was a physical brick and mortar store?
Brick and mortar store. They had stylists there. And it was a commission-based salon, so they got a percentage of the commission, but they did all the marketing, they did all the advertising, and then they assigned clients to the customers that they came in, and they also supplied the hair. So they bought it at the wholesale price, sold it at retail.
So you bought a franchise, correct?
Yeah, I bought a franchise.
So what's that process like? Because I think we spoke about that in one of our early episodes about being a franchisee. What is that process like, and how did you get involved?
So the whole franchise model is basically, instead of you starting a business from scratch, you are identifying somebody that already has a business that appears to be successful, and you're paying them to use their branding, to use their business model, their business plan, and in exchange, you're going to pay them up front, as a fee to get in, and then monthly they're going to take a percentage of your revenue. You know what I mean? And so that's what your franchise fee is. And the thing that most people don't realize is that the average business is only profitable within the 15 to 20% margin range, right? So then when you're a franchisee, if that franchise says their royalty is what it's called, if it's 4 to 8%, that's 4 to 8% of your gross. So they are a top line expense. They don't wait to see if you're profitable or not on the back end. So franchises, they can be good because it takes a lot of the risk out of what you're doing, but your profitability goes down.
Yeah, you said
that's
that.
a trade-off.
Can you explain that? When you said the average business is profitable 15 to 20% in the profit margin, can you explain that? Like what that means to the average person that may not understand that?
So the biggest issue that I see with a lot of us, the biggest thing that we have a lack of exposure to is when we start businesses, we listen to what somebody quotes as their revenue. Right, and that's the gross. So that's every dollar you've taken in, but that doesn't include what your rent cost is, what your labor cost is,
overhead.
Yeah, what your product cost is. Even when you bring in money, if you're in a business that has a lot of merchandise and products, even if you have profit, usually if your business is growing, you got to take all of that revenue and put it right back in the business to re-up on your inventory and probably buy more inventory to keep up with your demand. So there's a lot of money you can't really pull out that pot. Then you got like utilities, you got taxes, you got all these expenses that come along with running a business, and then what's left is profit. So, and most of the time that's 15 to 20%, especially if you're brick and mortar.
Yeah, you said that was one of your biggest mistakes, is getting into a business based on their revenue and not their net profit.
That's it.
How did that come about? How did you realize like this was a mistake that I made? Was
this business specifically.
Okay. So
when we opened, we hit a home run. The first year we did $450,000 in revenue. It's like 60% from the retail side and 40% from the services side, which is the hair salon. But the expenses were so high and we had to keep so much money tied up in it that at the end of the year, what was left on the table was about $60,000.
Wow. And
then I had a partner. So now you're splitting that two ways. So now we for all that work, you make $30,000 a year.
Oh, that's crazy. Can you just go into that? You said that your net was $600,000?
450,000.
450,000.
Yep.
And you netted 60?
30.
Yeah.
You have to split
60.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah, 30.
How did that happen?
Okay, so number one, we wanted to be in a prime area. So we went and got a retail space in a shopping center. We was like between a Sally Beauty Supply and a Sam's. And so that was like $5,000 a month right there off the top. Then since neither he nor I or stylists, or we knew how to run a salon, we had to hire a manager. Okay. And we had to have an assistant. So that's $70,000 right there. And then, the revenue for the hair extensions, only about 35% of that is profit. So we spent $200,000 on that. So, that that revenue looks like it's really high, but when you look at all the expenses, it gets smaller. Then you got utilities, you got product you got to keep in the salon for the stylists to be able to use. You got marketing and advertising. We were spending like $5,000 a month to stay on the radio to keep people walking through the door. You got insurance, so it's a lot of expense that's tied to that business.
And this is 2017.
This was 2014, 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times people don't fully understand. This is a reason why most businesses fail, right? Financial issues. They don't fully understand what goes into making a business. So even if you make in your case, almost $500,000 a year, you still might be broke. You end up making $30,000. It's like you could have worked a part-time job.
Really?
And now, but that business is probably taking like 10 hours a day for you to actually run, maybe even more.
Exactly.
Right.
And we were open 7 days a week, so there was no days off, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so even though you have a manager still looks to the owner to make final decisions on things. So you're on call all the time. You know, I tell people a lot of times what you said is exactly right. You may leave the comfort of a job to start a business, not really realizing you just created another job for yourself with less benefits, with nothing to fall back on. You know, so it's got to be the right decision. You got to really understand the business you're getting into.
No, that's a fact. So what would your suggestion be as far as for an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur that is going out there? Would you say that, you know, looking at expenses is just as important as looking at what they could potentially make?
Much more important.
Much more important.
Much more important, yeah. And, you know, and I highly advocate getting a mentor, somebody that's doing it. And, you know, because there's hardly a business you're going to find where somebody else isn't already running a business like it. And I encourage people to try to find somebody in a different market that's doing the same thing, so that they're more open and willing to talk to you about the ins and outs, the nasty part that people don't talk about. You know what I mean? Because they won't feel like they're creating their competition. But a lot of times, a lot of them just want to vent and they want to talk about, you know, the real issues, and they don't want to confide in their friends or their immediate circle, because everybody looks up at them, puts them on a pedestal for having this business. But so it kind of gives you an opportunity to be a sounding board and really learn the business. You know.
No, that's dope. And then also, experience is always the best teacher as well. I mean, no matter how much, you're still gonna have to make mistakes and learn on your own. Yeah. But like you said, you kind of curve the learning curve a lot if you actually have a mentor or you're working under somebody for a certain
100%.
It's not about what you make; it's about what you keep, man. For sure.
Yeah, and your school kind of conditions us to try to learn how to get it right on our own first. You know, like, don't cheat, don't copy off of somebody. But when you get in the world of business, your best bet is to copy the right cat.
Let's not try to read.
You know, that's a good. You know, that's a good point.
That was an excellent analogy.
That's actually a really good point. Never really thought about it like that.
Well, I mean, and that's something I teach too. Like, because I meet so many people in corporate America that are trying to get out, and I just tell them, number one, you got to retrain the way you think about everything. Because not only school teach you not to cheat, school teaches you that if you're wrong more than 10% of the time, you are not the best. All A students got to be right 90% of the time or more consistently to stay up on that pedestal. Whereas you got a lot of people that were C and D students they comfortable failing 20, 30% of the time, all the time, and at the end they got the same diploma you got.
You know, Jack Ma said something interesting. For anybody that doesn't know who that is, that's the head of Alibaba. He's one of the richest people in the world. And he said he tells his son that you don't have to be an A student. It's okay to be a C student, because those are the only people that have enough time to be well-rounded and to experience a lot of different things. Because the theory is that a lot of times it's like doctors, right? A lot of times they don't know anything about a lot of stuff, because they focus so much on medicine and passing all their tests. They don't know how to write a check, right? So what you're saying actually makes a lot of sense, and it is an issue with the school system, because even if you look at a sport like baseball, you bat 300, you bat 400, you're like one of the best ever. Like
that's
so
a rarity.
and that's less than 50%. You expect somebody to do 80, 90%. It's not realistic, in the real world. You make mistakes, especially if you're going to be broad range and have knowledge on a lot of different things. It's hard to just truly master 5 different subjects.
That's one of those questions we used to ask ourselves, right? It was like, should we know a lot about a few things or know a little about a lot of things, right? Because that makes you more well-rounded when you're versed in a lot of things, right? Like, I don't have a background in business, but I'm willing to learn in these areas, right? I might not know medicine, but I'll research on it. You know what I'm saying? So we got to keep ourselves well-rounded. That's why I always stress, like, education doesn't stop in school. Right? It goes beyond the 4 walls of the building of school. It goes in the living environment. It goes in the home. It goes in the community. It's all over. It surrounds us.
All right. So that was actually really good information as far as for anybody that's looking to get into business and business owner. But now we're going to go into some more stuff. We're going to go into real estate. And we're also going to go into your career as an engineer. I think that's interesting and something.
I think we've touched on that.
We haven't really spoke about that.
Yeah.
But all right. So we're going to that in the next segment.